Okay, let's go to the next slide. I'm just going to briefly talk to you about the homeless system in general, and then talk about some specifics around the Jordan River and some things that we're working on. There's 3 blue boxes at the top of that chart. That is the sources of homelessness, and it is a mile long, but we have put them into 3 categories: systemic, life events, and then housing insecurity. Homelessness is the catch-all of all of people in crisis from A to Z. Sadly, it's where it's the bottom line where people end up in crisis, and every person I've met that's homeless is in a state of high anxiety. You can only imagine not having shelter or basic things in life, what that does for people. Of course, mental illness is part of it. Children aging out of foster care, re-entry from incarceration is a big contributor. I mean, we can go on and on, but man, if we could focus on that green box, we would be so much better off. Prevention. I see a few mayors, or 2 mayors, I saw 3 here a while ago, but at least mayors that I know. Every city in this state has people that end up in homelessness. And too many people right now are living in a vulnerable state in their housing because of the cost of housing in Utah. And it's alarming to know that 8,700 people experienced homelessness for the first time in 2022. And that's a number that continues to go up. And that number's low because we don't have everybody that reports to the Office of Homeless Services. About 2/3 of the providers of homeless services in the state have contracts with us. So I'll provide data. 8,700 people. We've got to shut that tap off. Fortunately, most of those people are a transitional population, are in shelter 90 days or less to get into housing and back out of the system. Unfortunately, there's always a residual. With every tranche of 8,600 people, there's going to be some of those that will end up in what we call a more persistent homeless state. And then these are individuals that usually have co-occurring issues like mental illness, drug addiction, multiple interactions with the criminal justice system. Many have been in housing multiple times. There's some chronic issues that go along with that. And we get them into, there's a sheltered population and unsheltered. And what I mean by shelter, I'm not talking about being in housing. Shelters are resource centers, Salt Lake County. There's other like the Mission, Salt Lake Mission. There's a number of shelters, and these are congregate shelters. But we get people into them, and the design of those resource centers was that people would be there temporarily. That within 90 days, we'd have them out into services and back into housing. That's where the breakdown has happened, because the resources haven't been there. And housing is one of the core issues. Many people think it's just mental illness, it's just people that made bad decisions and you need to pick it up and get a job and that type of thing. It's so much more complicated than that. And housing is at the core of that issue, because people that are living along the Jordan River, worried about their personal belongings, or they're downtown, or wherever they're camping, or that are in the shelter, they're still feeling the high anxiety. They're worried about their personal belongings, worrying about their personal safety, especially if you have high anxiety. And the first thing we ask people that are unsheltered is, hey, come into a shelter, and you're gonna sleep with 50 people in a room tonight. The number one issue why people don't go into shelter is I don't feel safe. I believe our shelters are safe, but they don't feel safe in a congregate setting. And so a couple things we're exploring is non-congregate options. You've heard about the micro shelters. We got those up, and it's not running yet, but it's on 6th South, 6th West, and 3rd South in Salt Lake. This is a model we want to prove out. We're going to use it on that location for the next, well, until the end of April, maybe into May. The Salt Lake city property that they have. These are little units. They're called fold-ups. There's 2 units per fold-up. They're about 8 by 10. They're heated and cool. Because everybody's saying we need sanctioned camping somewhere. Let's do sanctioned camping. But we looked at sanctioned camping all over the country. And when I look at sanctioned camping, it looks like unsanctioned camping. and so our office is very resistant to sanctioned camping. What we'd like to see is that non-congregate element that comes with sanctioned camping, but not in tents, in a fold-up unit that has a heater in it to keep people warm. So, because people in tents in the winter, even in a sanctioned camping spot in Utah, are going to be looking to be warm. So they're heated and cool. There's congregate bathrooms, and anyway, we're proving out that model. SwitchPoint has just been selected as the provider of that, as the program director for those micro shelters. And we're going to start to work to refine that model so that that could be duplicated, triplicated, and quadruplicated across the state. Tooele also has just come up with their resource center in Tooele. It's 43 beds for shelter. These, having Tooele, having Davis County, having Utah County have more of a response will help relieve some of the pressure we have in Salt Lake County, because we show in data that we get a lot of people from those communities because the resources are not there. So we mandated in House Bill 499 last year that both Davis and Utah County have a winter overflow plan. We were up in Davis County the other day, and they're looking at doing something that's more permanent than that, which I applaud, because we need to address homelessness at the source of homelessness, which is in every city. Now, every city is probably not able to do what Tooele is doing, but every city that Tooele's size should be able to do that. And our Office of Services is here to help. But at the very core of the issue is housing. And here's some data to show that. California has the highest rate of homelessness, 44 per 10,000. It might be surprising to you to know that Mississippi has the lowest rate of homelessness, 5 per 10,000. Mississippi has been known to have a lot of poverty, some other issues there. So it is kind of surprising that the rates of homelessness are low. If you look at the rates of homelessness, the Midwest, lowest, Intermountain West, next highest, then the East Coast, and then the highest is the West Coast. Now overlay the cost of housing on that data, and it almost matches identical. The cost of housing is driving the rates of homelessness in this country. So we, as an office, I saw this when I first got into this position. So I've been focusing on housing, because we have people stacked up in our resource centers because we don't have housing. and also programming. And then when people don't have a place to go, where do they go? They're unsheltered. Or the South, or Jordan River Parkway. We have to have a place for people to go. And ultimately, I don't want more shelter. I want more people into supporting housing, getting the services that they need associated with housing. And so if you've seen the governor's budget, just to give you a couple of details, we'll have some more housing money should the legislature support that part of the governor's budget. They don't always do. And there's a significant amount of money in that budget for additional shelter, which we reluctantly are needing to do because the gap for housing is so wide. Garner Institute just came out with their study a couple months ago. In deeply affordable housing, that's 30% area median income and below. There's a deficit of 77,000 units in the state. And that's for every 100 household that has in the income bracket of deeply affordable, 30% AMI. For every 100, there are 3 units that they can afford. 97 people in deeply affordable, if they're looking for housing today, out of 100 will not be able to find it. So what was also revealed in that study is that market rate housing, we're really good at it. The supply and demand are matching. But workforce housing, 50% area median income, up to 80% area median income, 170,000 unit deficit. For every 100 household, about 50 affordable units. So this is the crisis we need to focus on as a state, as communities. It's housing, and it's affordable housing. And some, communities will not allow affordable housing. It's a struggle. We just had a grant issue up in a city in northern Utah that we've given a grant to that got denied last month. But yet has a really good program. It was sponsored by the Housing Authority. And so, these are the barriers that we've got to address. So getting people into housing and with the support that they need. I visited a city a while back, having trouble with a lady that was in some housing there in her city. The police were there like every day dealing with the issues that she has. And they said, well, what should we do? I said, she's in the wrong housing. There's no support there. She's in a mental health crisis and needs supportive housing. She needs to be in First Step House, or she might even need to be in the hospital in Provo for a while until she gets stabilized, and then you're out in a group home. And so this blue box is a continuum of mental health, housing, and services. This is an area of focus, and it needs to be more resourced. So they have places for people to go. And then people are sometimes going to have to be forced into that system through civil commitment. We already have a great civil commitment law in the state. It's just not utilized. And I think it's a lot of the reason for that is because it's not resourced. So, and then on the crime side of things, we know that crime is heavily associated with encampments and homelessness because of drugs and sex trafficking and all those things. But our criminal justice system has been the de facto response to all that, and for people experiencing mental illness. But that system is failed. We've tried it now for 30 or 40 years. It's not working. Our criminal justice system just hasn't been set up to deal with the mental illness. Now, for lower felonies and for misdemeanors, we should divert them into resources and into the mental health continuum and get the care that they need so that they can recover. Dade County in Florida has been very successful with this, using what's called the sequential intercept model. These are the kind of things that we're needing to address as a state, as a county, as communities. And at the end of the day, homelessness is a community situation. It's going to take community to remedy it. Every community needs to be involved and to take part in this and to help prevent that from happening. So these are the kind of things we need to be exploring, some things we need to be looking at. And if we can get the funding that the governor's proposed, it will make a big dent in this, in the gaps in this system that I just presented to you. Some of those responses are going to be more non-congregate types of shelters. We really want to prove out the micro shelter model. It's working in many communities. It's working very well because it's a place where you have a personal space. And so those who have this high anxiety on the mental health continuum, they're going to get better. It's going to be a better place for them to settle and then to move on into other services and housing, because this is a shelter model, it's not housing. But will be also, I think, a great transition once you've been in these micro shelters into a tiny home or something like that, a tiny home program like Salt Lake City is doing on Indiana Avenue with other side county. Interesting, Jim's presentation. I didn't realize it was that many jurisdictions around the Jordan River. But I think a more comprehensive, unified approach along the Jordan River with homelessness would be better. And I don't know how we get there. I haven't really thought about that. But that would be my opinion based on that his presentation, is that there needs to be unified, because unsanctioned camping is the worst thing that we can accept as society, absolute worst, and we should do away with it. Because people are living in places not fit for human habitation. There's sanitation issues, there's abuse issues, there's criminal activity. We need to end unsanctioned camping and not allow it to happen. But we also have to answer the question, where do people go? So anyway, I'm going to leave it at that, and hope I've presented what you wanted me to present for this, and we'll take questions if you have time.
If we could do 1 or 2 questions, does anybody have any more comments? Or anyone online? Thank you so much for coming and giving us an update, especially ahead of winter. Winter's not here yet. It is, but did anyone have any comments or questions? I didn't see any online.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for your work. I'm curious if you know, I'm guessing you at least have an idea, how much of our homelessness is from our society and how much of them is and is transitioning, from other areas.
Right. The Jordan River Commission did a study that showed about 60% of people are local. That's in your study. I think it was very helpful for us. What we find, we don't have a ton of data on this, except that the people that reported to us, we had the last place that people were housed. So I can go to Provo, Layton, I can go to Mill Creek, and I can tell them, here are the people, this is the number of people that they were in your community before they became homeless. So, and most of the people I run into, also I asked where I went to high school, it's in Utah. And then we've been a state of migration over the last 20 or 30 years. If I walked around my neighborhood in East Sandy, and asked where they went to high school, but I only find 50% of them went to high school in Utah. as the kind of migration we've had. And so, based on us calling together kind of different data points, we find that it matches pretty much the population in general. Because, you know, people come here from out of state looking for jobs and end up in homelessness. My wife and I do outreach every Friday night, and we know some homeless population very closely, you know, deeply, intimately. Just because the conversations we've had and we built trust, we've had them open up to us. By far the people from Utah. California just did a study, 90% of the people that are in homelessness there were people that became homeless while they were in California. And it's been very anecdotal for them out there that people are coming here because of people from Utah and those winter states. But it's just, yes, that happens. We get headlines that Jackson Hole send us a dozen people. You know, that's absolutely true. But for the most part, it's people that are from Utah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. If there are no more questions, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come join us.
And I'm just gonna request one thing
Yeah.
of the commission is we're putting together some information on the governor's budget. And we'll maybe send it out to Simon or to somebody here. And we're hoping that the commission would be willing to help push that. The legislature is going to be heavy lift, but those resources will make a huge dent in helping us with unsheltered camping and all kinds of things, because we have be answering a lot of that question: where do people go?
Wayne, thank you for being here, and we talked a little bit about legislative initiatives before you arrived this morning, and the governor's budget around housing and homelessness is one that we're really interested in. It looks very comprehensive. You've talked about a few of those key points. You know, one of the challenges that we have here, unlike places like Denver and Reno and San Antonio that have done really effective work, is we have a very decentralized kind of government. You know, the city and county of Denver are the same agency, and so they can work on regional issues all under one local government. Here we have the three largest cities in the state, all within Salt Lake County. The county's doing things, municipalities are doing things, and we don't always have that coordination. So we applaud the state has really stepped up with you and your organization. That's helping to bring that kind of coordination and collaboration. I personally applaud that. And kind of moving into the next level, I think is really essential. How do we work on these solutions now that you have a comprehensive strategic plan? How do we work on those solutions? And we would love to be a part of that however we can. You know, we've got council members and mayors here that can work on policies, and to the extent that we can come together and, you know, work on those collaboratively, we think there's great benefit to that. So that's exactly, you know, what I'm hopeful that we'll see, and I think many around the room here, I think are very interested in supporting this, because we know homelessness is a regional issue and it has to be solved with some regional solutions, and collaboration, coordination is to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's great to be here, and thanks for the invitation.